Thank you everyone for joining. Given that there is this global pandemic that's very clearly affecting all of us and all our lives are now kind of at a standstill, and the MF has also been impacted because of this. We have taken, considering health and safety, we've decided to have an online MFO this time. The collab that was scheduled for June has now also been postponed. So we thought, it's tough times, and so we thought it would be a good time for us to, I think, come together, express like our solidarity with each other, find out a little bit about what's going on in different MF regions, and so on. So that brings us to the MF Town Hall around COVID-19. So just a little bit about the coronavirus itself, which I'm sure all of us know. The coronavirus was, I think, earlier this year named officially COVID-19 by the WHO. CO standing for corona, VI for virus, D for disease, and 19 because the outbreak happened at the end of 2019. As you can see on my screen, as of this afternoon, there are, it's reached over 176 countries. There are close to 10,000 deaths around the world. Governments all over the globe are, calling their citizens to stay home, to stay safe, to take care of themselves, their families, and their communities. And we also, I think, as this Melton family, want to be aware of what are some of the symptoms we may experience if we are exposed to the virus. How does the virus spread? Also, what are some standard recommendations to prevent infection? And also just to be careful if we are around somebody that's been exposed to the virus. So that's what you're seeing on my screen. I think by now we all know that it's essentially a respiratory illness that causes fever, cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties. We've all been asked to wash our hands quite a bit, which I think we should be doing anyway, even if there is no pandemic, but now more so than ever. And lots of other basic sanitation and hygiene, which has now become of so much vital importance. And given the fact that this has, of course, affected all of us as Melton Fellows in our personal and professional lives, I would like to introduce the lovely outreach team and communications team at the MF, who are gonna all talk to us a little bit today about how the virus has affected their daily lives or what's going on in their regions. As part of the team of Outreach Fellows, we have Lindivi and Daphne from Ghana, from Ashesi University. We have Hannah from FSU in Jena. We have Sangeeta and Harshini from BMS in Bangalore. We have Cashin and Daudao from ZU in China. We have Pablo from UFRO in Chile. And then, of course, there's me as well. So I'm going to now hand over the space to my beloved outreach fellows whose idea this was, and who've been also working hard to bring their story to us as the MF community. So to kickstart the conversation today, we have our outreach fellows from China. Will talk to us a little bit about how the outbreak happened, how it's affected their personal lives, and how to survive a close to 2 months of home quarantine. So Cashin and Dauda, if you want to take it away, it's all yours. Yeah.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Dodo from ZU. I want to talk about how these things happened at the very beginning. So at the very beginning of the whole thing, there were whistleblowers admonished, confirmed cases hidden, and politicians claiming that things were totally under control. But the fact turned out to be way much better, as confirmed cases increased at a dramatic rate around the whole country because it was near the Chinese New Year, when people's mobility is just incredible. Things were not under control anymore, and Wuhan had to be shut down, and people nationwide were supposed to stay isolated since January 23rd. But the cover-up still continued for a few days. They said there were enough medical resources for doctors and nurses, and those donations went directly and properly to the hospitals. We saw those lies and got irritated on every news checking. Finally, all the distrust and anger peaked at the death of an ophthalmologist named Li Wenliang, who was one of the first to of the new coronavirus, but was admonished by the police, affirming that he was spreading rumors. Well, we witnessed a passionate young man died of the coronavirus on February 7th, aged only 33, which triggered the outbreak of our discontent to the cover-up attitude. We asked for transparent data, transparent donation process, and everything we should know. Thankfully, as a response to our keen request, the government officially took actions to ensure information transparency as the top issue. We set up special columns on popular apps, hold daily special TV program answering our most concerned questions, create a visual map of confirmed cases in every province, and you can even find how close the nearest confirmed patient is to your home. Also, thanks to the timely information, medical crew around the country can volunteer to regions in shortage. Donations around the country can be delivered to people in need. We finally went through the worst moment and things are now turning for the bright side. I can go outside right now if with masks, but for people who have just started your quarantine, here's some tips for you. First, don't read too much sad news online because this will easily tear down your mental being. Second, enjoy your time, review what you've done or absorb in new knowledge or skills. For example, for me, I'm now learning to be a real Chinese. I mean, learning how to cook. The last and the most important one, remember that even though we're physically quarantined, we're not isolated from the society. We can check on old people to see if they're okay. We can comfort people suffering from vicarious trauma. We can help moderate between kind donors and people in need if necessary. Some people in China are even co-writing a COVID-19 diary, memorizing the experience of their own and history ongoing. Anyway, try to make every day count. Stay safe, my friends, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so
Okay, I
much.
guess.
Hi, Kashan. Yeah, take it away.
Okay, so I'll take over. Um, the current situation in China is a lot better until yesterday. There are, I guess, 6,843 confirmed cases, and 6,287 of which are in Hubei province, whose capital is Wuhan, which means the coronavirus in other parts of China, I can see, will soon be eliminated. And some provinces have already zeroed it out. And the number of confirmed cases every day in China should not grow anymore since lots of overseas Chinese are flooding back in China recently. Some imported cases seem to increase. And it is because that the coronavirus situation outside China is worsening day by day while in China is getting better. So they think it may be better for those Chinese to go back to China rather than stay abroad. And two of my friends who study in the UK and the US are also planning to go back. And for me, I'm now in Moscow, Russia as an exchange student, and I'm not going back because the Russian government just planned a temporary policy until April 12th. So I don't know what will be like after that. And I still need to get my academic credits here. Since the outbreak of coronavirus in China, the Moscow government started a series of measures aiming at local Chinese. According to my own experiences, I was stopped by the police many times in different metro stations and was asked to show them the same document and so that they could take pictures of them and upload them on a system maybe. And they also took pictures of my face. So their CCTV system was able to trace me. Once if I was, for example, once if I was found infected and they could find out where I went or who I contacted. So I just don't really understand why they needed to upload the same information so many times. And actually, I was very uncomfortable with it, honestly. And last time when I was stopped again at the metro station when all the procedures were done, I just told the police that they should pay more attention to those who came back from Europe rather than us who have been here since October of last year. And because the first many cases of Russian people found infected with coronavirus was brought from Italy, which led to a wider spread of coronavirus in Russia. What's more, Russia has closed its border with tourists from China, and when those who work or stay in Russia came back from China, they were immediately put into a 2-week quarantine. And if you can see a Chinese walking on the street in Russia, in Moscow, maybe he or she must have been here for long and have been out of the quarantine. So I don't know why they're still checking Chinese people. And now in Russia, all the schools and universities have half shut down and offer online classes, and people are hoarding, but still not many people wearing masks in public. That's for my part.
Thank you so much for sharing, Cashin. I'm sure that I mean, it's clear that the governments are doing what they need to do to be careful. But as you mentioned, just discrimination because you're from a certain region, I think that can be tough. So I wanted to also ask you, how have you kind of experienced it or dealt with it? And have there been any cases of complaints, for example, or criticism of the government in Moscow?
Mm-hmm.
Cashin, we can't hear you.
Huh? Sorry.
Can you?
Could you see the question again? I don't realize it's a question.
Yeah, I was just
Uh-huh.
asking you. You mentioned that the attitude of the Russian government towards
Mm-hmm.
all Chinese citizens who are living there has been kind of stringent. So I was asking if there has been any reports or cases, for example, of criticism of the government, or how have you dealt with it kind of personally as an overseas student?
Uh, well, I think at first there are 2 Chinese people in Russia who was found infected in Russia, and they're Chinese, and they was immediately put into quarantine, and then they uh, and later for a long period Russian there is no any new cases in Russian until a woman from Italy, a Russian woman from Italy, and she was found infected after several days back. And so I guess during this period, which is like after the 2 Chinese cases was found in Russia, and the government started to take some policy, especially aiming at Chinese people in Russia, and because like we look like they can very easily tell from our appearance that we are not from Russia. We are maybe Japanese or maybe Chinese, and just stop them and ask us to show them the document.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure that must not have been easy, but I guess we're all kind of doing our best given the situation. But thank you so much, Dao and Cashin, for sharing. Of course, towards the end of the town hall, we'll have an open Q&A session with all our JFs, SFs, EXO that's on the call. Moving on, now I invite Hannah, our outreach fellow from Germany, to talk about the situation in Europe, the situation in Germany itself. So Hannah, take it away.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm very happy to have you all here, and I'm really looking forward to the next hour in which we are able to share our personal experience regarding the COVID-19 virus. So here in Germany, we had the first infection on February 27th. And at the moment here and generally in Europe, the situation is absurd. Like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we in Germany, and I have to be honest, including me, made fun of the virus and didn't take it serious at all. And suddenly, almost from one day to the other, everything changed and somehow escalated. All events over 1,000 people were cancelled, then over 100, and then non-public event was allowed. Restaurants, bars, cafes are closed. The start of university were postponed to the beginning of May. Borders between countries of the Europe Union are closed, which I have never experienced in my life before. But the number of infections every day is getting higher and higher, as you can see on the graph. And the German government still didn't impose a national ban on going out, but only request us to stay at home. And sadly, some people, especially young persons, doesn't adhere to the demand of the government and are partying at parks and stuff like that, which I think is now at this moment very irresponsible, because we see or we also see in the TVs and radio and stuff and media in Germany, we see how the situation is in Italy. The hospitals are crowded and unable to cope with the situations. Doctors have to decide to whom they provide healthcare and to who they have to let die. So I really hope that here in Germany the people soon understand how severe the situation is, so that we don't have to experience what they currently are experiencing in Italy. Yeah, that was it. I think Sangeeta will continue.
Definitely. I mean, if you have questions for Hannah or about the situation in Europe, in the meantime, please drop them in the chat box, and we'll definitely circle back to them during the Q&A part of the call. Yeah, we have our outreach fellows from India, Sangeeta and Harshini, who want to talk to us about something really important as well that's happening as a side effect of the virus, which is the impact on the economy, what's happening to the daily wage earners, and some statistics around that. So yeah, take it away, Harshini and Sangeeta.
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Sangeeta and I'm from the BMS campus. I'll be speaking about the economic impacts of the virus that has disrupted the world. So players ranging from travel agencies like Make My Trip and Booking.com to hotel players like Airbnb and Oyo are actually fretting over dismal numbers as travel comes to a halt and countries have imposed a lot of restrictions. India's aviation alone is looking at about 80,000 job losses, and the World Travel and Tourism Council has announced that the virus impact could render 3.8 crore people jobless, which is around 70% of the total workforce in the hospitality and tourism sector in the world. And most cities around the world are prohibiting mass gatherings. In India, all entertainment venues are shut, and this year's edition of the Indian Premier League has been postponed. This has definitely impacted online platforms like Book My Show. An increasing number of companies are also asking their employees like to work from home, and people in general are avoiding non-essential travel even within the city. So companies like Ola and Uber have dropped to 30% usage in most of the cities. A large number of products sold online, be it Flipkart or Amazon, come from China. Though Chinese markets are slowly reopening, but backlog of orders and shipment delays are still playing spoil sport. Online players like MedLife are actually getting more orders, especially for items like masks and sanitizers, but dealing with a potential shortage of medicines will be a major challenge to these firms. And because the educational institutions are shut down, online classrooms are expected to benefit in the next 8 months. Platforms like Unacademy and Topper have announced free online classes until the end of April. Coming to the medical sector, the Council of Medical Research has warned that India has about 2 weeks to halt the onset of stage 3 of the virus. As of now, testing is limited only to those with travel history to affected countries and those who have come in contact with them. And obviously, this is not as reassuring as it sounds. The 62 labs notified by the officials can conduct nearly 8,900 tests daily, but they say that they just get 90 samples per day. And until March 18, India has just performed 11,800 tests, much too few for a 1.8 billion population in the country. Equally important is that these results must return quickly in a matter of like few minutes and not 2 to 4 days as the present scenario stands in our country. And I guess India has been doing a great job until now in terms of being proactive, but uh, I guess that it needs to tap in more amount of preparedness for the coming weeks as we need to stop the onset of stage 3 of the virus in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sangeeta. I think there was like also a lot of valuable information. And as you said, I mean, the Indian Prime Minister also made a speech recently where he kind of assured the citizens that while we all realize what's happening to the economy, for now, let's fight the health crisis together and stay safe and stay healthy. And then we will have an economic response team also to figure out what's happening with the economy. I'm sure it's the same worldwide. As I said, we're happy to take questions, comments in the chat box. And I'm also very happy to invite Harshini, who wants to talk about a subject that she's extremely passionate about. And I also share that passion. So yeah, Harshini, take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Harshini from BMS, and today I'd like to share a little about the situation in India and some things that I've noticed that have upset me a little. 28th of March. However, the same notification included that teachers would have to come into college, which was something that was pretty upsetting. And most of the countries are trying to follow a 75% social distancing quota, which includes a lot of service related people still working, transport, and also sectors like daily wage people, which includes construction, cleaning, and several other aspects. It's quite upsetting because a lot of these sectors involve people who are on the older side of the age spectrum, which makes it really sad because they're the ones who are more susceptible to the virus. And because of all of the queries that have been reaching out to the government, which I think they're really doing their best they can. So these are some of the other things that they're trying to do to help benefit the situation or make it better for the others. So in Kerala and also in UP being the most populated state in India, the government has promised to provide at least 1,000 rupees to all the families that are minimum wage workers. So since social distancing is an aspect to be strictly considered, all of their daily lives have been really affected. And given the fact that other situations through which they can easily acquire cheap food or even shelter for that matter are being affected, it becomes important for the government to chip in a way so that they cannot entirely lose their livelihood. So in the UP, like I said, they're planning on dispersing about 1,000 rupees per person of minimum wage workers. However, a lot of economists have found out that this is going to be quite difficult in both a fiscal aspect and also logistically because of the economic hit the country is taking and also on a global level. The army, surprisingly, is now going to work from home. That is, of course, not the workforce, but also like the strategic teams and other sectors in the army. So the government also is seeking to look at MLAs and MPs working from home now, because again, it includes people in on the older age spectrum. the government has also mentioned that anyone ditching the quarantine can face up to 6 months in jail, and also a fine of 6 months in jail and a fine of about 1,000. And this is mainly because a lot of people aren't taking the situation seriously, and they forget the fact that even if they have good enough immunity to get out of this, they can be very strong carriers, and it will become very difficult for a system like in India, which already has a medical system very stretched out, and they're trying their best. And another aspect that the government is looking at is to produce more active pharmaceutical ingredients. And this includes things like masks and sanitizers. And another really interesting aspect is that they have set prices. So for all of these items, and no one can claim for more amount of money, which I think is really important in this aspect, because they have found people with like fraudulent items of the same, which can really affect people in this point in time. And in India especially, a lot of the gatherings happen due to regional causes, and this can also be taken care of if the government comes in and these gatherings aren't held. So the Ram Navami gathering that was supposed to be held from 25th of March to 2nd April is now being asked to pray from home instead, to avoid a mass gathering, which I think is really, really good, to avoid about, I think, at least over 10,000 people gathering in one area. So I think even though we hear a lot of cases about people in despair, I think the government is doing the best they can. And I think we should do our best too to help people who are putting in their time and effort. And another good thing is that the first case in Karnataka that was tested positive, he has been recovered and he is released. So I think we definitely have hope, and we need to do our part to help the government and to avoid being carriers in this situation. Thank you.
Absolutely, a fabulous job. Thank you so much, Harshini, for shedding light on what we can still be hopeful about, and what we can also do as citizens, given a situation like this. I think that what you said about the government stepping in when they need to is absolutely true, and we hope that without the situation, worsening in India, citizens are still careful enough and still take the measures they need to stay in quarantine as requested by the government, and also just for their health, for sure. Next up, I want to invite our communications and outreach fellow from Chile, Pablo, who's on the call, to talk to us a little bit about what's happening in Chile, in Temuco, what's the situation, and what's the impact on education as well. So yeah, Pablo, all yours.
Hi everyone. I will talk to you about the situation in Chile, quarantine measures, and online education. So, the first coronavirus case in Chile was registered on March 3rd. A 33-year-old doctor who had traveled to Southeast Asia on vacations. From that day, the cases began to increase through the days. In first instance, a questionnaire was started at airports where those entering the country were asked if they had symptoms. As the day passed on March 15th, under pressure from the mayors of our country's cities, classes for preschool, primary, and secondary education students were cancelled for 14 days, respecting the quarantine suggested by the experts. Directors of the universities, seeing what was developing, decided to replace the face-to-face classes with the online modality. In this case, in the case of those who have not yet finished the second semester of 2019, and a student who will start their first semester of 2020. Some have already started with online classes, while others have not yet started their classes. our university is completely closed. Officials are doing teleworking. The same modality is being adopted by many companies where the presence of the worker in the usual place is not necessary. On Wednesday, March 18th, the borders of our country were closed, preventing the entry of foreigners but the entry of Chilean citizens. Since Thursday, March 19th, the president decreed a state of constitutional emergency of catastrophe throughout the national territory with a duration of 90 days. This determination allows limiting certain rights or constitutional guarantees, such as free movement or locomotion of people. From this day on, all almost closed, except supermarkets, pharmacies, health centers, banks, and stores for the delivery of supply for construction for the home. The above further contagion inflated the growth curve. Currently, it is proposed to close the region to which we belong, to close some communities where the outbreak is widespread in the country, but execution of these actions has not yet been confirmed. The last national report shows a total of 434 infected with SARS-CoV-2. The table of the left shows the breakdown of cases by duration. And the graph on the right show the projection made by experts who estimate that the peak of infections will be on April 1st, with more than 43,000 people affected approximately. This calculation was obtained from the curve equation for exponential growth updated on March 12th, the last update. These days are crucial to reduce the curve, avoid a general contagion as happening in Italy. That is why there has been a lot of emphasis on washing hands with soap, avoiding the kiss grating on the face, very typical of Chileans, and stay in their house. Well, guys, this has been the report from Chile about the coronavirus situation.
Thank you so much for sharing, Pablo, and also thank you for showing us the graphs and the case breakdown. And we really hope that the situation gets better, not worse, in Chile, and also that the online classes are working at least half as efficiently as the physical actual classes. Yeah, sure. Next up, we were, of course, supposed to have an update from our outreach and communications fellows from Ghana in Ashesi. But unfortunately, Ashesi University requested that their international students travel back home, and Daphne and Lindy right now don't have access to data to join us on this call, which is quite unfortunate, but I'm also happy to invite Hannah, who is stepping in for her team and is going to take us through what Lindy and Daphne wanted to share. So yeah, Hannah, go for it.
Yeah, so it's me again. Hello, everyone. So I will just present the situation in Ghana and Pan Africa, and also the impact of the virus on education and other fields in this region. So far, 35 countries are affected of the COVID-19 virus, and in total 700 confirmed cases are confirmed across the continent. And especially in Ghana, there are 11 persons that are got infected with the virus. That's why the school have been closed, like in other countries all around the world. And also the government and the politicians asked their people to avoid public places like churches, malls, parties, and of course also take proper precautionary measures, and just don't leave the houses and so on. I also said, in Europe the borders were closed between some countries, and that also happened in Ghana and in this region. And it's also forbidden to enter Ghana for some people from countries with high risk of infection. And the plan is so far that school have to be closed in Zimbabwe in Zimbabwe the schools are closed since March 24th. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah. And I mean, Lindy and Daphne are with us. Like, they're trying to keep in touch on WhatsApp, and this is everything they wanted to share. But I'm sure, we'll send them the recording and hope that they can get back online very, very soon. So with that, I definitely want to say a huge thanks to the outreach team of fellows for preparing and for also sharing your experiences with us. And I also want to invite Alafia, Sonali, Stefan, our EXO, SFs to all, pitch in and share about what's happening in your regions. I'm sure, Alafia, if you can, also address the questions in the chat box, that would be lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you to our outreach fellows. Thank you, Ashi. So we've got some questions that are in the chat window. I guess I would be the U.S. representative in this conversation. Unfortunately, we do not have new fellows from the U.S., but very similar situations where we're having, for example, my county and the surrounding counties are on lockdown. So we have a curfew instituted, no public gatherings, and except for the provision of getting food. Most people are being encouraged to stay home, but many are not. And so I think it was very poignant to talk about what we can do as Melton Fellows and just as citizens of the world to really pay attention. I was also one of those people that didn't really take it seriously until I had to think outside of myself, like, who do I know that already has respiratory issues? Folks in my home have asthma. They're elderly people. So as we navigate through the world and we're adhering to quarantine, I think it's a good idea for us to also talk to our peers that may not be adhering as much. So with that, I'll go ahead and address the questions in the chat. So Stefan, would you like to ask your question to the entire group?
All right, yeah, thank you. I mean, there's many questions. There's so many uncertainty. The economic presentation is really, which I think is something we have to be very worried about as well. I mean, there's, especially in Chile here, many people that live from their daily wages, just like maybe in India, that they don't have a social service system. They're not even registered in a sense. So I'm really worried about these people. But to make more specific question is, firstly, I think Hanshini already addressed it a little bit in the chat, is with the population so dense in India. I remember when I walked through India, it's so different to Germany because so many people. So I'm really afraid about that there will be a rapid kind of a rapid spread all of a sudden there. So I know the measures you described them, but I wonder how the poorer populations can actually prevent social contacts. And the second question, maybe to our Chinese friends, is a lot of issue. I don't know if that's an issue. I'm wondering because in the German newspapers, they write about how Trump is now always calling it the Chinese virus. And there's kind of a information war going on in between China and the US. That some Chinese media reported it might have been GIs, US soldiers that brought it in. So is it something you follow? Is it something that chit-chat some politicians do because they want to kind of divert attention? I don't know if that's an issue in your country.
So if anyone would like to speak, just go ahead and flag us, jump right in, raise a finger, and let us know that you'd like to contribute to the answer.
Yeah, Harshini, go ahead.
Okay, I think I'll answer the question. Well, since I'm not in China, so I just saw some information, some messages from the social media that many Chinese people are using, and people are really angry about the expression, the Chinese virus, because um, honestly speaking, it's if a virus, it has to be from a specific place, and it happens to be China, but it's not a reason for you to call it a Chinese virus. And most people are, because the Chinese people, honestly speaking, not really like fond of Donald Trump, and they just also because Donald Trump, they make a lot of memes, and also like do something, also make call something about Trump, something Trump, maybe Trump, if there's a virus and they call it Trump virus, like to attack back, but which I don't really think it's a good way to, it's not encouraged, but I can, I can see that people are really angry about this expression, and the government, the Chinese officials are also hope that Donald Trump will apologize for this expression, but yeah, and it seems like most people just make fun of it and also angry about it.
Well, I think that about these issues that we don't take Trump's words seriously every time he said bad word to us, because because Trump is not our president, and sometimes we seem like we always knew how he would act and the style of his words, but but it's not about Trump. It's about he as a president. He acts out as a bad model for those racists who pretended to be a politician. Some people, they are well racist, but they get used like they use the coronavirus as an excuse to say that they are now doing the things of something of right. But I think that's a thing that's very annoying about the stuff. So that's not something about Trump's words. It's about how people use this as an excuse. So we feel very sorry for those Chinese people who are suffering all this racism abroad. And I hope that people can realize that things are not gonna work like that. Yeah, that's my personal feeling.
Yeah, I also want to add that especially the celebrities and maybe some the famous politicians, sportsmen, or even singers, artists, and they they are like exposed to the public, and they should set a good example of the other people. And once if Donald Trump says something bad about, like, for example, this Chinese virus, and we will blame it not only Trump but also the maybe the country, the U.S. We will sometimes say the U.S. The United States, what something like that. So although I think it's not a very good behavior, but I think celebrities should set a good model for their people, for their country, especially when you are president of a country. You should set a good example of your citizens. That's why I think why Donald Trump's words like just make people angry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're supposed to be a good model. Okay, go ahead.
No problem. Indeed, it is up to our public officials to represent us well. And so we have a raised hand from senior fellow Marla Kelly.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm one of the senior fellows from DU, class of, I don't even want to say, but class of 20 years ago, feels like, but DU class of 99. And I just wanted to give a little bit of an example of what's going on in the healthcare field. I'm an OBGYN, so, unfortunately, babies are still going to come. So we still have to, I go to work every day. One of the things that's happening regarding healthcare workers is the lack of protective equipment. So PPE, or personal protective equipment. So for example, I had a day where I solely operated. I was handed one mask and was told to wear the same mask for every case. Fold the mask, put it in your pocket, next case. So when you are in surgery, you gown, you glove, you mask, your head is covered, usually your feet are covered as well. A mask is not sterile equipment. But, you know, if you breathe into the same mask for 12 hours, it gets a little funky. So I just want to say that there is a cost and a price for all the hoarding that some people have done, because people who absolutely need it, we don't have the supplies for them. And the other thing is, thankfully, many of the American medical associations, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, American Cancer Society, have all come out suspending cancer screenings. We are not doing mammograms. We are not doing pap smears. If you are pregnant and you are not viable, i.e. less than 22.5 weeks pregnant, unless you have a problem, we are not seeing you. So there's a lot more even to the healthcare part that's going on that, you know, you may not see if you're sequestered at home. And then, of course, you have to worry about whether or not you're bringing this home to your family. So I just want everybody to remember that. And again, pray for everybody who is out there every day working. And again, for those people right now, honestly, the giant salesperson is the most essential person to me. The person at the grocery store to make sure that I can go and get food. That person is essential now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions or comments for this section of the conversation?
I think Harshini wanted to say something regarding the Indian situation.
So to answer the question about the protests, I think in Bangalore, just like in Delhi, Bilal Bagh has always been bringing together artists to express their views through art instead of any other means. And they're now continuing to do so even on online platforms. They have live streams every now and then discussing about the topic, because protests definitely can't be held on ground. On a more global perspective, even Greta Thunberg has spoken about moving protests entirely online, keeping people informed about the situation so the cause is not forgotten. That can also be an effective way to keep the energy going on. So these are just a few ways in which people are still contributing. So I mean, it's definitely not the same as physical protests on ground that officials would notice, but I think people are still doing their part and contributing to the situation in all ways possible.
Thank you so much. So going back to the chat, and speaking of protests, Pooja has asked, sorry, where is the question? So Pooja has asked if protests have been paused, and I'd like to also hear from fellows in Chile, because of the civil unrest that was also happening and present there. Have those protests also paused?
I can answer that. Hi everyone. Yes, protests have stopped now, and it's actually legal to gather more than, I don't remember now exactly number, more than 50, 100 people in one place. So we had some issues, I think a few days ago, where somebody was trying to gather people to protest, and I think the guy was basically now 50, yes, now 50, and so it is illegal. So the police have the authority to maybe lock him in or give some fees. So everything has stopped, and I think young people has a very are quite aware of what's happening. I've been into the center of the city because I have to go to a doctor, and most of the people I've seen there is old people, and I was really impressed because I really can relate to them. I'm in a risk group, especially because I have asthma, so I shouldn't go out for a while. And I was so impressed when I saw all that old people in the center of the city, and I said, okay, we should get inside. And something else that I want to talk about is how the government has been handling the situation. I feel that so yesterday I was watching the Angela Merkel speech of the government in Germany, and she basically said what every government should say. And she said also the same things that our government says. So stay home, be calm. The supermarkets are not going to close. Please don't panic. But what impressed me the most is the way in she talked. So she was very calm, and she could really speak her mind and really express in a way that really would calm you. But in our case, I feel like our president is really not communicating anything clearly. And I don't know how it's in other governments. How do you feel your government is handling the information, and how do you feel their position is? So I leave that question open. So
I can.
Can I add? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. You're gonna answer the question of Joaquin, or we're gonna be in this question.
I was gonna answer Joaquin's message.
Okay, perfect.
I'll say and I can only speak for myself and where I live, and my own impressions of government response, and I'm kind of disappointed that we're so reactionary instead of preventative. Very, very much reactionary. Like, oh, well, we're not going to take it seriously until there is an emergency. And Marla, working in healthcare, the reality is that we don't have an infrastructure that can take all of these cases as they come up. And so quarantine is essential to minimizing it so that our healthcare system is not put under even more stress. And as she had mentioned before, there are people that are not able to receive care, lack of supplies, and all of these things. And I feel as though, at least from my own perspective, that we've not done a good job of preventative measures versus reactionary. And that's it from me.
Isa wanted to say something from the chat, or maybe Mai.
Yeah, I wanted to answer the question about Chile, about the protest, because I see that the protests haven't stopped. They've only changed, and for example, last night there was a call that people had to bang their pants, and at 9 p.m. to demand the president for quarantine. So everybody, there are a lot of buildings around here. Everybody was like, there was like a huge noise for only banging pans and all that, and they were like putting their videos up. So the protests have moved for online, and because they're like it is very difficult that the protest will stop, because the president has such a low approval that everybody is they're just, I think that they're just trying to collaborate and try to save themselves, because they know and trust that the president is not going to do anything. They're still demanding people to go to work. They haven't given any solution, so they have to go to work, and they're just waiting for vulnerable people to die. And that is like the common sense of people around that I've talked to right now, because I have had to go outside my house every single day of this quarantine, because I am taking of a patient in oncology in the hospital. So I have to go every single day, and I have to talk with the taxi drivers and the artisans that are still selling their stuff in their streets, and the people that they're hopeless, you know. So It is just a matter of finding an outlet, and the protests are more alive than ever, I think. That's on my part.
Isa, I think you can go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am FSU Senior Fellow, for those who don't know me. I just wanted to add something from the German or European perspective, because Joaco now mentioned the speech of Angela Merkel. I was in an interesting situation because last weekend on Saturday, my cousin got married in a small circle of 15 people in Austria. I've been in Vienna, and it was crazy because the day before I was already super insecure if I should still travel there with the train. Also because the mom of the groom has cancer. But my whole family was still like, no, relax, come, and yeah. Then the day when I arrived there, everyone was getting nervous, and it was the day before the wedding. And in Austria, I had the impression everything, like the political reaction was more quick and less hesitant than in Germany. So we could still have the wedding in a small circle on Saturday. And luckily it was still nice, but the day before and after was super strange also for my family. And we already got the notice that the border will shut down, that Austria will have the ban of people, and we were wondering if we can still get back to Germany. And it was very interesting for us. We were watching the Austrian news and the German news in comparison. And yeah, in Austria, they already reacted quite quickly last weekend and made the ban and everything. So then we went back on Monday. I went with my sister in the car of my uncle and my aunt, and we arrived. We could pass the border without a problem, even though there were already the cars in a line and so on. And then my sister and me went back to my family's place, to my parents, who are both part of the risk group. So we were wondering how we can make quarantine protecting my parents also from us. And we were still following the news, and yeah, we were waiting for the same measurements taken in Germany as in Austria, because we could see already how crazy the situation was there. And I actually the past days, I was just hoping they would make the ban, because I could see, or I heard, and my mom, who went still for the supermarket, told me about people not taking the whole situation seriously. So for me, it was interesting to see the different reaction of Austria reacting more quick than Germany, and also wondering why German politicians are more hesitant apparently. And also I heard a lot of people questioning, like, oh, are we now turning into an authoritarian system because of the ban? While I am just saying, come on, please. I would be happy if people now really stay at home, because apparently not everyone is responsible enough, not even for themselves, for protecting themselves. So that's something from my personal and the political situation here in Europe.
Okay, so I am not sure that I've seen any more questions that are in the chat. So with that in mind, does anyone else have a question that they'd like to pose to the group for the town hall? Mai, I see your hand.
I would like to know if anyone here is struggling in some way. I would like to know, maybe we can help. I think, I don't know, that we look at things like very much from a legal point of view, but if any of you is struggling personally, maybe, I don't know, like, I don't know if talk about it here, but like we are here, like we should be able to count on each other and maybe look for ways, you know, if you cannot go outside, maybe someone can or has like more equipment, maybe we could facilitate that as well. So I don't know.
Excellent point, Mai. So, as you all can see from the input from senior fellows and the EXO, like we emphasize this again and again that we are available for support, and we should be able to feel comfortable enough to talk to our global village, because this is in fact our global village. And in order for it to not only survive but to thrive, we need to, as a group, support each other when necessary. So our inboxes are open. So please feel comfortable and feel confident that there is support out there.
For example, just a little thing, I have my mom with me, and she's a senior citizen, and she needs vaccination because we're going to go into flu season here. So if anyone from Chile knows any medical, like a team that is going to their house, to the houses, because it's very dangerous to go to like a crowded place right now for elder citizens, just let me know. So, you know, we can just raise some questions that maybe other person will not.
Yeah. So I see that Pooja would also like to add to the conversation. Pooja, please go right ahead.
It's along the lines that Mai just started with. I was wondering how everyone who's present in the call is dealing with mental health, social distancing, quarantine, not so nice for depression, or the entire situation for anxiety and a whole lot of other issues. So I wonder how everyone is dealing with it.
Yeah, this is Patty here. I will answer from my side that question. It has been very interesting about what is happening around the world, how this is a historical issue situation, and it's really shocking to see the entire world being affected with the same disease. In our personal life, it has been interesting to be with the kids at home, doing homeschooling, doing the work from home is something that we have been doing for years, so it's nothing different. So we are trying to have like an internal schedule at home for the kids to study and for us doing the work. And we definitely do a sport every single day. From 7 p.m. we start with our gym at home with the kids, my husband and all that. But everything changed yesterday because my husband, he received a call from the health ministry saying that he was in a meeting last Friday, and unfortunately the person sitting just next to him, he has been announced yesterday that he is a positive and he is with the disease. So he has been requested by the health system to obligatory quarantine. He still was working, not every single day, but they were doing this kind of churn with the colleagues. But he can go anywhere since yesterday when we received the notice. Of course, we were very scared when we got the call, because you are kind of even more close that happen or affect you directly, because it's since yesterday, before yesterday, we were like just watching the news and feeling like things happens over there. We have to keep doing our daily life as this new system, blah blah. But after that call, everything changed, because we might be infected, because my husband, he had a directly contact, and the meeting was for 1 hour and a half, and unfortunately he was sitting just next to him. So we have a pretty high percentage of possibilities to have it. We don't know yet. We cannot have the test, because that is only for people who already have the symptoms and they are feeling very bad. So then you go and do the test. So we don't know if we have it or not. So we just have to wait. so far has been a week since he was with this guy at the meeting. He hasn't feel anything. This morning I have feeling a headache. I was feeling like all the symptoms, but I think that it's just because I am, in a position that it happens like for 1 minute, but then I'm doing fine. So I think I don't have anything, hopefully. But yeah, it's something that is just beginning. We just have been all at home for a couple of days already, but that will be longer. And definitely, I think the mental health, as one of the fellows was asking, is a very important issue that will be probably one of the second priorities for families in everywhere, how to handle it and trying, adult or parents who have kids are trying to do our best to for our kids as well, to keep everything calm and safe at home. So yeah, that is from my side. I definitely would let you know if everything's going well. So if after a week I'm still talking and surviving, that would be a very good news. But I'm positive. I really am positive, because in the case that we do have the virus, we are very healthy. We eat healthy. We are not too old. I'm probably the oldest one here with Marla. I don't know, but yeah. So at least I feel like I have some backup, like that will help me to, in case I have the disease, to hold this fine. So yeah, so that is the situation over here, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I will let you know how things goes.
Would anyone else like to contribute to this portion of the discussion? How are you all doing?
Yeah, I wanted to add something or commentary. What I've noticed, so it was my personal experience. I mean, it's all over the media. Everybody is talking about COVID-19, the virus, the symptoms, what's going on in society. But I think it's not only a global matter, also a personal matter. And that's why I decided personally to not be in contact that much with the news and all the information, because if I let this matter be the dominating matter of my life, all of my thoughts will go around this virus and I will go crazy. But if I watch the news once or twice a day, or even not watching it and reading a book instead and staying at home, I mean, the probability that I will get infected, hear my own four walls, is very low. And the fact that I would infect somebody is also, like, the chance is very small. So doing this and not focusing on the problem, but focusing on things that I like. So maybe my girlfriend and me, we want to start drawing together, things that have time to, and which are positive, instead of focusing on the negative things. I think this is a crucial step in staying mentally healthy, because if we always think about the bad things, we will go crazy at one moment. So that's why I decided not to putting too much attention taking too much attention of the COVID-19 virus, just enough so that I know what's going on and the important things for me, for my life, if I'm allowed to go out or not, but not more, because I cannot change the way, the process of this virus. I can just take care of myself and the people around me. So that's why I want to say, or tell you from my experience, that I don't consume too much media and social media and whatever, just not to be overwhelmed by negative information. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Martin, for saying that. I think it's so important, because in my house, 24/7, the TV is about the virus. We are all constantly freaking out. And just last week, I had a cough and a sore throat, and I was panicking 10 times more than I should have been. And turns out it was just my sinuses. So yeah, it's so, and after that, I just decided, okay, 10 minutes a day, but not more than that. I think it's so important to remember that the virus is is a part of our day now, but it doesn't have to be our entire existence. So our entire day doesn't have to be about that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Margaret.
If you all don't mind, I'd also like to contribute to this portion. For myself, I also live in a home where my partner is a public worker and is exposure possibilities are high. And so at least in my house, we're having more conversations around, okay, let's assume that we're going to be infected. Do we have the necessary supplies? Do we know where the nearest testing center is? What is the requirement to be able to go to that testing center? So it's been a reorganization of the conversation to be very much so in assumption that we may in fact contract the virus. And so I think that is aided actually in our mental health because like many of you have stated, this is the thing that's in all of the media. And it can really mess with your mind. And so my group of friends and my partner's group of friends, we actually started playing trivia games online together live to sort of keep that connectivity going and just have small moments of really, really positive things to sort of counteract the constant infiltration of information around COVID-19 and its impacts. And there's a lot of fear, and the fear is valid because the aftermath of what this looks like economically is going to be something we're basically in a really interesting moment in history. And so I think paying attention is good, but also being very mindful of your mental health and trying to keep those relationships with your friends and family and others, and doing it digitally because we live in a time where it can happen, which I'm very grateful for because, 20 years ago, maybe this meeting would be the only one of its kind where we're coming together to talk about something like this. So we're living in a really interesting time, and that is my contribution to this portion. So does anyone else have anything else that they would like to contribute?
Yeah, I would just quickly like to add that you get, sometimes you just get sucked into that rabbit hole of your thoughts and anxiety and all this information that is being bombarded, and often you don't want to even think about it, but then you get a message on WhatsApp saying, hey, there are 50 more cases in India, things like that. And something that helps me in different scenarios in life, but mostly with mental health, which I would like to share, and if somebody is interested, could practice, is playing this GLAD game. So at any time when you're like going into like a spiral of thoughts, to just take a break, take a deep breath, and name 3 things that even in that difficult situation you can appreciate or be grateful for. So sometimes it can be something simple that I really am grateful that I have enough resources to probably deal with this better than somebody else who might be in a worse situation or in a lower economic background, who doesn't have the choices that I have. Or I'm grateful that I have my partner with me to share this with, that I'm not completely alone. But there are several people who are in countries that are not their home countries but are stuck there and are alone and don't know what to do. So maybe we can all practice playing the GLAD game once a day. And I think definitely helpful, at least for a short period of time, to get your mind away from the negativity.
Yeah. In fact, I know we're a little over time, but we can do it now. If a couple of you want to share 3 things that you're glad about, Sonali, do you want to start? It sounds lovely.
I named 2, I think. Good resources, a loving partner to share this time with, and I think 3, that even at this moment, I'm aware about the situation my grandparents are in. I know they are in several ways compromised, but at least I know that they are in a better situation than somebody else. I'm in constant contact with them and doing my bit to assure them, at least remotely, that things are going to be okay. And if they require anything, I'm a call away. So those 3 things make me feel happy.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have another person to jump in on the GLAD game, but I did want to address Pooja's question. Perhaps more support groups digitally should be created. So as you all know, and we've emphasized before, that this is your global village and you have your WhatsApp groups. Utilize them. There is a lot of power in having this opportunity during quarantine to build these relationships and to have these support groups and to have these sorts of conversations. And as we mentioned in the beginning when we first started, we hope that these conversations still continue even after this town hall meeting. Okay, so we are coming to the end. We're about 2 minutes over time, but I would just like to thank you all so much for being a part of this. And to the fellows, I know you all were disappointed in not having the NFO in person, but I'm so glad we were able to meet online and move as much of our in-person NFO to an online space, and to have an opportunity for you all to showcase your work and have this very necessary discussion. So thank you all so much. I'll also open the floor to my colleagues to round out this session. Okay. Would anyone else like to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to tell everyone to try netflixparty.com. It's very fun. So I watched I think 2 TV shows with like a bunch of friends, and we can live chat about like what's happening on the screen. So it's been fun. Yeah, it's kind of like a Netflix town hall. But stay safe, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today.